Well, here we are. Welcome everyone to the Cloud English podcast. We have a lot of things to talk about. Today is day 5 of our 15-day English learning program. Now, if you have not gone through the first 4 days, make sure you go back and check those out. Once we have completed our 15 days, I will be putting all of these into a single, clear, easy to follow playlist or collection that everybody can play through directly, and it'll all, I promise, it'll all fit together very naturally. So, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about practice. That is our main focus for today. Why do we need to talk about practice? Because practice makes perfect. But, as one of my favorite quotes, Vince Lombardi says, only perfect practice makes perfect. It's not just that practice makes perfect. If you don't know what that means, well, I'm sure if you think about it, you can figure it out. But we'll be talking about it throughout today's podcast. If you are listening to this, you're welcome to watch on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. If you're watching this, you're welcome to listen anywhere that you might find podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So feel free to, do whatever you got to do to get to either of those. You can check those in the links in the description. You can also sign up for a free course. So if you want to get a free course about natural English conversations, click on the first link in the description. The course is called Natural English Conversations. It's a sort of fun, dynamic course that I'm very proud of and has helped, I think over 50,000, maybe 60,000 people improve their English conversations. So grab that. Again, that is free. You can check out my full courses in the same place if you like. And today we'll also be answering some questions. So if you have questions and you're here live, well, I'll be answering questions. What else? Yes, the objectives for today. I should talk through those before we get to our main topic, which is going to be how to practice with a word generator. I'm going to be looking at a very simple, basic tool that you can use for a 2-step practice process, and that is from a random word generator. It's very easy to do. The steps are very simple. I'll be showing you an example, and you can kind of follow along and then do it yourself anytime. Practice is a very important part of improving. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about lifestyle, although that will be our main focus for next week, so it won't be too detailed. Just a few things on that. And then we're going to be going into phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs, of course, a specific structure like idioms that doesn't necessarily make sense immediately, and uniquely they have a lot of different meanings. So we're going to be talking about phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb, rather. The phrasal verb stand up, and you might be surprised how many different meanings it has. And as I said, questions are welcome. If you haven't already done so and you're watching, don't forget to hit the like button or the thumbs up button and subscribe. Also, if you're listening somewhere, you can click the heart or whatever you have to do to show support. That is much, much appreciated. Okay, so I hope everybody's doing well. I've got a coffee, which is good. Thank you, Kathy. And we're ready to kick it off. We're going to be starting today on the blackboard, and it'll make sense in a minute, but the reason we're doing that is because what we're doing is kind of loosey-goosey. It's not something that you follow in a very strict step-by-step structure. It's something that you should use exploratorially? Let's see what the heck word. Wait, give me 1 second. Is exploratorially a word? Exploratorially, no. Exploratory. Exploratory is the adjective. Okay. Exploratory. What? Give me the adverb form, Senior Dictionary. Adjective. Okay. Exploratory. Show me alternate forms. Wait a second. Am I just blanking here? What is the adverb form of exploration? Explore. Let's just go with explore first. Word Hippo says exploratively, exploratorily, exploringly, exploratively, synonyms, exploratorily, experimentally. Okay, well, anyway, we're down a rabbit hole already. We'll come back to that perhaps. Okay, so let's start with association and improvisation. All right, let's do that. When you're practicing English, you want to make sure you're doing things that aren't going to waste your time, things that actually have an impact. So, I would like to talk through a 2-step exercise you can do using a random word generator. Now, I'm going to explain how it works and why each step is effective, or why each of the pieces actually works. And then we're going to actually do it. We're going to practice it. And then I'm going to challenge you to do the same. Now, what is the issue when it comes to a word that you, and I'm doing air quotes here, know? If you learned it in a list, one of the main issues is that it has no context. It has no association. There are no links between it and other ideas, concepts in your head. Right. And also, when you try to use it, you don't have the feeling for it because you haven't practiced using it much before. Right? Right. So, we have a 2-step process where we can get closer to solving both of these issues. The issues of not having connections between words that we know and other ideas and other words, and the problem of not having the experience or habit to use the words we know in sentences. Okay? So we do association and then we do improvisation. Okay? Now, first, we need to get a word. Now, a word should be, I think, something that is not super basic, like banana. I mean, it's so easy to use a simple noun, right? But it also should be not too weird and specific that it's hard to associate anything with it, right? So find something that is a little bit challenging, that you know, but that you don't have a lot of experience using, that you feel will be a challenge, a bit of a challenge to talk more about. And again, we'll go through this step by step. So I'm going to go over to randomwordgenerator.com, and I'm not necessarily recommending this specific random word generator. This is just a random word generator, okay? There's nothing special about it. Now, it's interesting because you can do, you can choose the number of words. You can say, I want 3 words. I want only adjectives. And the first letter has to start with an E. All right, so then you generate random words. You get earthly, eastern, and ear splitting. Ear splitting would be one of those words, I think, that's a little too specific because, number one, it's an adjective, and number two, there aren't that many different ways to use it. It's the same as saying very loud, so it's not a great one. But Eastern might be somewhat okay, And earthy might be somewhat okay. I think it might be better to go with nouns because then we're talking about specific topics, right? And it's a little bit easier to connect your thoughts to specific topics, whether it's a countable noun or an uncountable noun, right? Whether it's a thing, a physical thing we're talking about, or something that's a little more abstract. So examination might be good. Establishment, that one might be too vague because it can be used in a lot of different ways. Let's try again. Let's actually get rid of the E qualification. I don't know why I need to have that. Boyfriend, anxiety, passenger. All right, let's just click through a couple of these and see. Possibility, nature, priority. I like nature. That's a good one. Variety. And by the way, here's the first step of the process. Don't push yourself to, I have to go with the first one. Find one that kind of resonates in you, something that kind of clicks for you, and then go with that one, right? There's no rule about, okay, it has to be this word or that word or the first word or whatever. Variety, library, presence. I feel like library is a little too basic. Presence is good. I just want to see some different options here. Idea, sister, height, world, photo, shopping. Actually, let's go with shopping. Not because shopping is a difficult word per se, but because shopping has a lot of ideas and concepts connected to it. So let's try shopping, okay? Remember the ing form, but it'll work. I think it'll work. So let's go over to the blackboard. Now, first I have to sort of explain what we're going to do, then the concept behind it, then we'll practice it, okay? So what we're going to do here is write down our keyword, shopping. Nothing particularly special about this word, right? But what I want you to do is try to, as quickly as possible, make associations with this word. Now, if you think about shopping, what things come to mind? For me, more things will probably arrive in my mind than for you if you're an English learner. Why is that? Because as we grow up in a language, we're surrounded by, let's say, things that we have names for. And if that thing has a name and we engage with that thing, we go shopping, we do all kinds of other things that also have names, and those get kind of associated with that thing, and it creates a kind of net or mesh of connected meanings. And as you get better at a language, you get better, your brain gets better at connecting these things together. But when we're learning words, we often don't think about these connections. And that's why when you have that feeling of, I learned these words, but I can't use them when I need them, that's why you have that feeling. So what we do here is we just, as quickly as possible, write down as many associated things as we can. Whether it's a noun or an activity, any kind of word that we feel can in any way be connected with or associated with the concept or the idea of shopping. And I think a visual might help here, so I'll bring this back. But let's imagine that we have here a lake, a beautiful lake, right? And this is something I've talked about before, but bear with me, okay? And here you have a new word that arrives, bloop, and it splashes into your lake. This lake is your entire vocabulary in English. Now you have another lake over here that's way bigger, and that is your vocabulary in your language, which has all of these connections between words, because words represent things and concepts and words, they are linked together, right? By activities that we do, by their context, right? But here's your English one, and the problem is you learn this one and it goes boo, and it sinks to the bottom. And you learn another one, bloop, and it sinks to the bottom. And you learn another one, bloop, and it sinks to the bottom. So now you have a bunch of these isolated words sitting at the bottom of this lake. And now you need to use one of them. So you're asked a question, you're in a conversation, you're in a job interview, you're asked something that requires one of these words. So you need to dive all the way down to the bottom of the lake, grab one of these, and pull it up and use it. And it's this exhausting effort every single time to dive to the bottom of the lake, find the word you need, and pull it back up. By the time you're done with this, you're exhausted, right? Well, what happens if it's your native language? If it's your native language, oh, I'm getting a call here. Weird. Let me turn off my notifications. I usually do that, but I forgot to do that. Okay, we're good. Right, so what happens if this is your native language? If it's your native language, something happens. You're asked a question in an interview, whatever it is, some situation arises. And because it has all of these built-in connections or associations with words and their associated objects and concepts, the words that you need in that situation automatically rise to the top. It's as though the situation that you're in, the context that you're in, is like a magnet at the top of the lake, or a net, or whatever analogy you want to use, and it pulls up all the necessary words and idioms and phrases. And when you need to say something, you don't have to dive all the way down to the bottom of the lake and make the effort to pull it up. It's just boom. It is there automatically in your head, and you just speak. And you don't have to think about finding your words. So why is it that that happens in your native language, but not in your second language? Why do you get that frustrating feeling that you're exhausted in finding the words that you need? It's because you haven't practiced enough. You haven't encountered as many situations. You haven't found yourself in enough contexts where you would need to use all of those words. And so the words haven't sort of connected themselves together to a context, to a situation, right? So in order to get that, you need to do a lot more of that. And it's kind of that simple. You need to expose yourself to the English language much more. You need to use it much more. You need to communicate much more. And over time, gradually, you will find when you're in a situation, the words you need just kind of pop up in your head and you don't have to work as hard. And you'll find that these words start to make connections and links together, so that when you bring one of these words up to the surface, you find other words are kind of naturally, I know my drawing is kind of ridiculous here, but naturally connected to that word because they're related in some way and you may need them. And that's kind of how the human brain works. It is like a flashlight in some sense, and it shines itself on the language that you will need in a specific situation. And that's how we get around the problem of words that have more than one meaning. I know what you mean because this word in one context means a very different thing than another context, but we're in this context, so I easily know what it means, right? That's how we get around the problem of knowing 50,000 words but not having to actually search through our brains word by word in order to find them when we need them, right? So I'm not sure if that visual gets the idea across, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about here, right? Access your ability to retrieve words in specific situations. Okay, so we have that idea. Let's get back to shopping. All right, so we have our word shopping. And I want you to, if you want to do this with me right now, do it with me right now. If you want to do it later, you want to find your own word, do it later. That's totally fine. But let's do shopping. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just write down literally anything that pops into my mind. I'm unprepared for this. You saw me use the random word generator. This is unprepared. It should be, right? Just whatever pops into your head. Here we go. Retail, sales, cheap, luxury, jealousy, holiday, ATM, credit, convenience, warmth, friendship, fun, debt, let's say greed, FOMO, attendant, desk, discount, download, addiction, and let's go with one more. Let's say swipe. Okay, SWIPE. Okay. I didn't know what I was going to write down before I did it, but this is what I came up with as quickly as I could. I wasn't really thinking too deeply, just word association. What it shows me is the breadth of how I think about things. If I think of the word shopping, am I thinking of the same kind of things? Very narrow. Shopping. Okay, store, attendant, clerk, credit card, shoes, window. I'm thinking maybe of specifically one shop and just picturing those things. Well, that's fine. I could do that. But what I would like to do is be able to make all kinds of even abstract connections to shopping. So I might think about the very physical things. And the first thing you can do is kind of picture it, right? Like, okay, I'm shopping. What do I see? And that would be a very basic way to start. Well, okay, I see an attendant and I see a desk and I see myself swiping a credit card or going to the ATM to get cash. And let's see, that's about it. But I want to change tracks then. I want to be a little bit more abstract. I want to talk about the idea of shopping. Okay, well, that's usually related to retail. People may buy luxury things or cheap things. People may get addicted to it. They may get into serious debt. Okay. Now I want to maybe talk about things that people associate emotionally to shopping. How people orient themselves to shopping. Well, people say it's fun. It's a great activity for friends to do together, right? They might do it during the holidays. Black Friday is coming up, right? Maybe they get, which one of a friend's one? Maybe they see a friend that has something and they want it. My friend has it, I don't have it, so they get a feeling of FOMO or fear of missing out, right? Warmth, maybe you get during the holiday season. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote warmth, but maybe the Christmas time, the warmth of the holiday season, or maybe it's just your safe thing that makes you feel warm and safe. I have no idea what I was thinking when I wrote down warmth. So jealousy, I'm jealous of my friend's new BMW, for example, or I got a great discount during Black Friday. Again, I'm just word associating here. Okay. So that's the first step, and you can keep going with that. And what you find is it really pushes yourself to make these connections and think in slightly different ways about the words you know, to think more narrowly in terms of what happens when I do that activity, and to think more broadly in terms of what are the effects of that activity, or what are the things I personally associate with that activity, or what are the things that culturally it means, sort of, what are the cultural connections with that are somehow related to that activity, right? For example, if I say addiction, maybe it's because I know that a lot of people suffer from online shopping addiction. They just buy stuff and then they max out their credit cards, and it's a big problem, and then they get into debt. Well, that's not true everywhere. That happens to be true in the United States where I live, so that's a natural association that I make, but it might be different for you. So this is very personal, and it's not, you don't want to be too strict about it. Not everything has to make sense. I honestly still cannot figure out why I decided to write down warmth. For some reason I did. But, all kinds of different things. I think there's a pretty good distribution of concepts here. A few actions, which is nice. I didn't know I was going to write down actions, but I've got swipe here, like swipe a credit card. And I have another one. Discount could be an action to discount something, or it could be a noun. It depends on how you use it. And I guess that's it. Some adjectives. Convenience, I guess that's a noun. Convenience would be the adjective. And cheap and luxury. Luxurious would be the adjective. Luxury is the noun. Okay, so anyway, we've got some things. Now what should we do? What's the next step in the process? Now you do improvisation. So improvisation is when you speak without a clear plan about what you're going to speak about, right? And there you're also forcing yourself to keep going, find new connections between things. When you're talking, it's not about how correct you are. It's not about being perfect, right? It's about keep pushing yourself to just try to say more things. What you want to do is look for associations as you go. So you start on one topic, and you might see a little branch pop off to the left when you're talking about shopping addiction, and you might follow that a little bit and then come back to the main topic. So allow yourself to jump from thing to thing, from association to association, and really push yourself to keep going. You'll find that activity kind of forces you to make these conceptual links between words, and that's going to help you down the road. When you find yourself in these contexts, those words are going to more easily come to mind when you're speaking, when you're trying to answer a question, when you're in a conversation. All right? So let's give it a try. Now, I could, if I wanted to, use Otter, which is a good recording tool, but I think I'm just going to use my phone here. Excuse me while I scratch my nose. I'm just going to use my phone here. I'm going to pull up my voice record app on my phone. Where is my voice record app? I don't often use the feature on my phone. I usually use my computer to record. I know I'm recording right now because you're watching this, but I want to just simulate the feeling of it. It's important to record yourself so that you listen back and think about what you could improve upon. Voice, what the heck should I search? Okay, voice memos. There we go. Voice memos. It's my first time using it since 2019. What the heck? Okay. So we hit record and you just go. You've got your main topic. If you want to look on the paper that you've written the words down, or the screen, wherever you have them, and you want to use some of them, you can. But don't give yourself too much pressure. This is not meant to be pressure. This is meant to be improvisation to get you to make those connections as you're speaking. Okay, here we go. I am not a huge fan of shopping for fun, although I know a lot of people like to do it. And I think the main reason for that is that I'm kind of a minimalist in what I want to own or have. And shopping, I think, can hack the brain to make you in the moment think that you want something that you don't actually want or need. When you're in a shop, the things in the shop say, hey, buy me. And for some people who don't have a lot of self-control, that can lead to shopping addiction, especially if they have access to a large credit limit. Whether they're shopping in stores or online, it's very easy to get hooked on just seeing something you want and buying it immediately. I tend not to do that. I tend to use what I need as my kind of guiding star for what I will or will not buy. I'll say to myself, I need a new camera. And then my next question will be, I have $800 to spend on this camera. And then my next step will be, all right, let me now find a product that fits my criteria. Right? So it's not about fun. It's about, first, I need something. Then how much am I willing to spend on the thing? And then now let's find it. Then I get to have fun. Then I get to enjoy myself in the process of researching the products, watching online reviews, reading about it, which one is better, doing comparisons, asking people I know. This process is fun. So I feel like it's the best of both worlds. I get to avoid the problem of shopping addiction, feeling jealous about what other people have, or feeling like I just need luxury stuff. And instead, I can spend responsibly, but I still get the fun of looking for things to buy when I do need something, because I get to research, I get to read reviews, and so on. And so that's what I think would be a good approach for someone who's struggling from either shopping addiction or has found themselves in debt because they use their credit cards too much. Change your way of thinking. When you're in a shop, tell yourself immediately, don't buy anything. Unless you go into the shop, before you go in, you tell yourself, I need 3 things. These are things I need. And when you go in, you will now have goggles on for only the things that you need. And you can still enjoy yourself in that process. This actually works. I think it's a very effective way to prevent yourself from overspending. And I would be curious to know if others have other strategies for shopping or spending money responsibly. Now, I could keep going if I wanted to. I could talk. Already gone for 3 minutes, so that's enough. If you want to go for 5 minutes, if you want to go for whatever, it doesn't matter. At least 3, I think, is good. You want to really talk a bit, and then you want to listen back to it and ask yourself, okay, what could I do differently to make it more clear? What could I do better? If I were going to keep talking, the next thing I was going to talk about was Black Friday, which is coming up. So these seasonal holidays and how they create a sort of frenzy, but also how you can get amazing deals during this time, and the psychology that people have of, oh, during this time I can get good stuff. Ooh, nice, right? Okay, so let's listen to it. And if you don't like hearing your voice, don't worry about it, right? You'll get used to it. Just push through that. You'll be fine. I am not a huge fan of shopping for fun, although I know a lot of people like to do it. I think the main reason for that is that I'm kind of a minimalist. What an idiot. What I want to own or have. And shopping, I think, can hack the brain to make you in the moment think that you want something that you don't actually want or need. When you're in a shop, the things in the shop say, hey, buy me. I think I could have been a little more precise there, but overall, I think I presented my premise well, the basic point well. And I don't even think you need to have a specific structure. The key is not, again, organizing things. This activity is not about building an outline. It's not about structuring things for a presentation. It's all about how you can push through not knowing what to say and find things to say as you're saying them. And again, making those connections between words. So we have a couple of things we can do. Number 1, we find a new word, or it doesn't have to be a new word. We find a word that will work well for this sort of thing. Then we do word association to create connections between words, specifically and abstract connections. There's really no criteria or requirement for what is a connection and what's not. You write down as many as you can for a couple of minutes. Then you do improvisation and record yourself speaking about that word abstractly. You can approach it from many different angles. I talked about my spending habits in regards to shopping. You can do whatever you want. Again, the activity is forcing you to think on your feet and make connections between words and concepts. That is my challenge for you, to do it once. If you want to share it, you can put that in the Discord group, which you can join for free. That's in the challenge submission part. If you want to put it there, you're welcome to do so. Or if you want to share a link, you can put that in the comments, or just let me know how it went. Put in the comments how this activity worked or went for you. I'm very curious to hear how you feel about it and your feedback. This has worked for a lot of students that I've worked with, but I would really love to hear how you feel about it once you try out this activity. Okay. All right, see, we have some people here joining. Great. Kat is here and Vitaly is here. Hi, Luke. You okay? Therapy, grocery. Yeah. Yeah, Vitaly, I'm good. Why do you ask? I'm doing great. A bit of window shopping, mystery shopping, home shopping, stand in line, pick up a bargain, go on a spending spree, comparison shopping, online shopping. Right, so this is an interesting one. So Vitaly, here, I'm seeing great connections there. If these are the concepts you want to connect to shopping, mystery shopping, home shopping, stand in line, pick up a bargain, go on a spending spree, comparison shopping, online shopping. But I sense that you start to get kind of stuck in a little area. I can call that a cul-de-sac. You know, when a road ends and you can go around like that, there's a cul-de-sac at the end. You kind of get stuck in there. You want to build the skill to break out of that, to be able to try a completely different direction. And think of it as looking in different directions. Okay, different types of shopping, bargain shopping, home shopping, great. Well, look in a different direction. Activities associated with shopping, look in a different direction. Emotions associated with shopping, look in a different direction. And this is an infinite exercise because I just picked one word from a random word generator. You could do this 10 times a day, every day if you want to, and never run out of words and concepts. So that's what makes it kind of cool, because it's a continuous exploration. And you have to find those new ways of looking at things. Okay, well, why did I get stuck on specifically different types of shopping? I mentioned several different types of shopping. Yeah, I don't know. Find something else. What about shopping in different countries? What about spending habits? What about credit card use? What about retail as opposed to wholesale? What about brick and mortar and the trends around brick and mortar shopping? What about home delivery? What about local businesses? What about addiction, like I mentioned? What about associated activities? What about the decline of malls? What about the reason that society is so we're so focused on consumerism and having things? What about Marie Kondo's idea of only buying things you really need and throwing out old things you don't use? All of these things are associations you could make. It's kind of like looking in different directions. I think it's kind of cool. You get better at doing it, and the better you get at that, the more flexible you become with the language, right? Lateral thinking would be a good way to say it, for sure. Yeah, to develop lateral thinking. Absolutely. Hello, Lisa. Welcome. Good to have everyone here. If you have questions about anything in terms of activities, exercises, idioms, culture, grammar, I will be able to answer questions. I do also have a couple other things I want to talk about, but happy to answer questions too, for sure. So we talked about random word generator questions, and we're going to be getting into. I'm going to talk a little bit about lifestyle, but we'll be focusing on that mostly next week. But no, sorry, actually, it might be in 2 weeks, because next week I don't think I'm going to be doing live streams because it's Thanksgiving week. It's going to be very difficult. On Wednesday, I will be driving all day. On Friday, I'm going to be doing a lot of family-related activities, and so it's going to be tough. I don't think I will be able to do any podcasts next week, but then we'll be back the following week. Oh. Okay. I'm curious what kind of options we have here. Word type. Non-English extended. What is extended? What does it mean by extended? I'm not sure what it means by extended. Maybe odd words that are very uncommon? I'm not sure, because these words I'm not very familiar with. Calaboose, I don't know what that is. Hoarsely, yeah. Concentration, okay. I don't know why. I don't know what that is. And then, see if we choose non-English words. Okay, we get Spanish. Okay, let's just choose the words we want. Cool. That's pretty cool. Word type. Let's go verbs. And I can search by syllables. Greater than, that's cool, greater than 5 syllables. Generate. No words satisfy the conditions of being greater than 5 syllables? What? All right, let's see greater than 5 letters. Extract, embrace, schedule. I'll bet we could get some nouns that are greater than 5 syllables. Greater than 5 syllables. Only one? Are you kidding me? Responsibility? How big is their list? Super small. Interesting. All right. Another thing that's really important in terms of practicing is to think about your practice as a real part of your daily life. If you think about practicing English as a thing you do for 20 minutes 3 times a week, you're going to create this tension between your life and things that you like to do and the things that you have to do, such as your practicing English, right? So I think it's very important to keep in mind, and we're going to be talking more about this later. It's very important to keep in mind that it's much easier to integrate something that you want to improve into your lifestyle and keep doing it than it is to maintain the activity or the exercise when it's a chore, right? So if you have a thing you have to do, anything that happens could make you say, well, not this week, maybe later, right? Well, this is the classic one would be going to the gym. If you buy a gym membership and you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, it's so easy to give up on that. To say, I don't know, 3 times a week. I don't know, something comes up and then I cancel, and then eventually you completely fall out of the habit. Now, some people just love going to the gym, and that's great. So some people have a sort of fitness mindset or a lifestyle that somehow integrates going to the gym, and they're really good at that. But some people don't, right? when it comes to learning English, what do you have to do to make English as much as possible part of your life rather than being just exercises, practice, dedicated sessions of learning or whatever, right? There's so many things, but I think the most important thing to do at the very least is find things that you want to do anyway that you have to do in English. I've talked about before doing meetups, online meetups. You can sign up for all English online meetups in almost any city in the world around your interests, books, book club. I'm going to a book club this evening online. It's a philosophy book club. And I go every Wednesday. We talk a lot. It's great. It's free. In your city, there are probably meetups that you can join, participate in, right? Just have to find them. They're everywhere. Meetup.com, Startup Grind. There are all kinds of different things around different communities. What's the speaking one? Toastmasters. All kinds of different activities. I want to get better at this. I'm interested in this. How can I figure out how to make the thing that I want to get better at in general and my interests also part of my English learning journey, right? That's what you should try to figure out. So that even if you don't manage to do the exercises or the practice that you're supposed to do 3 days a week that you've decided you're going to do, you're still making progress. It can be as simple as changing your phone language to English. Just kind of getting you into a little English world that you create for yourself, right? Yeah, of course, you should be reading books in English. You should be watching movies in English, ideally without subtitles in your native language. But other things, too, that you can get involved in, that you can do just to make sort of English the background language all the time in your life. Sort of the default language, right? Of course, you can pay for classes. You can pay a teacher to teach you, and you can talk with a teacher for an hour. But I accept many people cannot afford that. It's pretty expensive. You can pay to have group classes. That's a little cheaper, right? But then you get less speaking time. Okay, well, what other thing can you find that can be part of your life that you can do? Maybe you volunteer somewhere and you know that people volunteering speak English. Maybe you find a practice partner whose first language is not English, but someone who speaks another language, and you have to figure out how to communicate in English. At least you're practicing, right? And you're maybe talking about things that are interesting to both of you. And you have a commitment to that person to be there at a specific time. So there's a bit of pressure. So that sort of thing. If you can find those things and integrate English into your life, think of your lifestyle as a kind of process that happens, and you can make changes to push you in one direction or another. You can kind of push it in the direction of having an English background all the time, of being kind of surrounded by the English language, having a bit of English immersion. And you'll see over time that at least you get more comfortable with it. You gain confidence in using it. You're able to use it a little bit more naturally. Yeah, maybe you're not getting corrections. Maybe you don't have a teacher. Maybe, you're not working with a native English speaker, but at least you're practicing and you're communicating, and that's important. And if you're developing self-awareness, then you're able to make self-corrections that will allow you to make progress. So just start thinking about that. I know that's pretty broad, pretty general, but if you just start thinking about that kind of thing, you're going to start to identify places where you could, I guess I could join I like this video game, but there's a server in that video game that's an English server in North America, and I could join that server, and then when I'm doing the voice chat in the game, I'm doing it in English. Hey, that's a good idea, Do that. We'll talk more about it more specifically next week, but just something to keep in mind, just something to think about. Vitali says, is it common to use the phrasal verb to scare up to refer to cooking something fast? I've heard it. It's not particularly common, though, to use scare up. To rustle up and to scare up are two words that make me, when I hear them, I immediately think of cowboy English, right? Sort of cowboy English. I don't think anyone would use it in a modern context, so probably not. I have heard it, though. It's correct. I mean, it's English. Excuse me, it is English. It is English. Absolutely. All right. Before we get to our phrasal verb, I got claimed last week by not only Dinxi Xiaoge, who I showed a video of. I thought, there's no way she'll claim me. I'm showing her stuff. I'm sharing it with a new audience just for a minute as well. Claimed. And also, then the U.S. Marines claimed me. I thought, there's no way the U.S. Marines will claim me. They claimed me. The Marines! What's going on? Crazy. All right. Keep the questions coming if you have them, but I do want to get to our phrasal verb for today. Let's pop over to the blackboard. Okay. The phrasal verb stand up. Literal meaning, of course, to be sitting and then to not be sitting anymore, to stand up. Has some other interesting meanings that are related to the main meaning, but I think it's definitely worth exploring. Now, you may also have heard of stand up, stand hyphen up, comedy. Stand-up comedy. What is this? This is when you have a comedian on a stage with a microphone who is standing up. So it got the name stand-up comedy. Actually, I don't know the origins of stand-up comedy, but it's kind of obvious. They're walking around a stage with a microphone, and so they're stand-up comedians, right? It's a type of comedy. Well, okay, that makes sense. We know the simple meaning of stand-up. So to really explore this, I think what we need to do is look at some examples to get a sense for the different meanings. Now, I challenge you as we go to come up with examples that follow kind of my meaning, right? We'll pull out the meaning from the examples. I want you to make examples for each of the groups we talk about to get a sense for it yourself, to be able to understand how to use it yourself, right? That is really important. In order to be able to use something naturally, you have to practice using it naturally, right? You have to make it a habit so that when you need it, you can use it automatically. All right, so let's look at our first set of examples here. Everyone in the aisle had to stand up to let them pass. Standing back up after getting the wind knocked out of me was no easy feat. The sofa was easier to get out the door once we'd stood it up on its side. It took 3 of us to stand the dresser up and push it against the wall. So here we are talking about the literal meaning here of things being not upright to being upright, right? But it's slightly different in each of these uses. So everyone in the aisle had to stand up. Means we were sitting down, let's say we're in a movie theater, and someone's walking by carrying 2 gigantic things of popcorn, and they can't get through, so everyone has to stand up so that they can get through with their giant buckets of popcorn. Okay, so stand up. Why wouldn't we just say stand there? You could just say stand there. Often we use standing when we just mean the thing that's happening. We are standing, right? She is standing. We've been standing here for an hour. And when we talk about the action of going from sitting to standing, then we might use stand up to emphasize that transitional action, right? Now notice for this second one we have here back, which adds information. So you can put words, nouns, adverbs between the activity, between the phrasal verb rather, in order to add clarity. So stand the dresser up, stand it up, and stand back up. This helps to give it a little bit more of a visual sense or a bit more context. Because if I say, standing up after getting the wind knocked out of me was no easy feat, standing back up gives it a feeling of returning to where I was, right? So you were here standing, then you fell down and got the wind knocked out of you, then you returned to your feet. It emphasizes the sort of struggle of getting back to where I was, right? That's why we often use the word back. We want to emphasize a return to what was there before or what was true before. The sofa was easier to get out the door once we'd stood it up on its side. So stood it up doesn't mean that the sofa belongs on its side, but it happens to be that you can turn a sofa onto its side, in which case it looks like it's kind of standing. Normally we don't say a sofa is standing on the floor because it's longer than it is tall, right? If something is taller than it is long, then when it's where it should be, we say it is standing. But if something is longer than it is tall, when it's in its normal position, we don't say it's standing, right? The sofa is sitting on the floor, right? But if you turn the sofa up onto its side so that it looks now taller than it is long, at least temporarily, then we stood it up on its side. We have to say on its side because that's not the normal place or the normal way to place a sofa on the floor, right? But if something is naturally something we would stand up, like, for example, a dresser, then we don't need to say on its side or anything like that because that's how it's supposed to be. So it took 3 of us to stand the dresser up and push it against the wall. It's a very heavy dresser. Maybe it's made out of reclaimed Russian oak. And so it's really heavy, and we lift it up onto its legs. Maybe it has 4 legs, right? Little legs. We don't have to say onto its legs, though. To stand the dresser up usually means that's the sort of position of the dresser and how it usually is, and maybe that gives us a feeling that it stands up because it's a kind of tall thing, right? Now, it's not clear what is the line between a sofa and a dresser. I don't know what the line is exactly, but we generally get the idea of things that are a little taller, we stand them up naturally. And you wouldn't naturally say stand up for a sofa unless you want to make a special clarification that it's being stood up in a special way on its side in this case. Okay? So that's the basic meaning. That's the basic idea. Let's go on to something a little bit more interesting, I think. A little less literal, but in some way connected. You have to stand up for what you believe in. How come you never stand up for me? You're a coward. If you stand up against tyranny, don't be surprised if you get crushed. I tried standing up to a bully in high school and got trounced. So here we're referencing the primary meaning here, or the more literal meaning, but in a less literal way. To stand up for what you believe in doesn't mean you literally stand up on your feet from a sitting position. But when we think of that, it's this sort of action of not being put down, not in a backward position, but rising, right? But in this case, it's not literal because it's for what we believe in, right? So maybe you believe in a cause or you have some kind of identity and that's very important to you, and others don't like that or others disagree with you. That could be political, it could be national, it could be family related, it could be your values. I won't even say what it is, right? Maybe you believe that, let's skip it. You believe in something, okay? You believe something is important. A family, what can I say that's not controversial? Family first. Okay, your family is very important. Okay, so if you stand up for that, what it means is that if that belief is challenged and others are trying to encourage you to do something against that thing that you believe, that family should be first, others are trying to get you to pursue your personal interests. Maybe you have a monetary opportunity, but that will have a negative impact on your family as a whole. You stand up for what you believe in, meaning you maybe disregard that or push those things away, those pressures away, and you say, no, I'm going to follow what I believe is right, no matter what. If you stand up for that, it's sort of like doing it against something that's trying to push you down. And I know that's very abstract, but that's the idea. If you stand up for what you believe in, that means you're not willing to immediately fall down if somebody doesn't agree with that. You're willing to say, no, I believe this. This is important to me, okay? How come you never stand up for me? You're a coward. Now, this could be more literal or less, right? You have a good friend, and your friend is criticized by others, and you don't say anything. You don't make any comment to defend your friend. So that would be defending their reputation, defending their honor, defending them as a person when they're criticized. Maybe they're not around and other friends are making fun of your friend. And you just say, haha, yeah. Well, you're not maybe standing up for them then. What you could say instead is, hey, you shouldn't say those things behind his or her back. That's not good. If you have things to say it to them face to face. Okay. So that would be standing up for that person. They're not there. Now, if you stand up for them and they're there, it could be the same thing, right? You say, hey, don't say that. That's not nice. Standing up for them. Or poof, and punch someone in the face because they're being threatened, right? So it could be physical, as in you're standing up for them to defend them physically from a physical threat, like being beat up or something. Or it can be sort of the reputation or when they face criticism, that sort of thing. It's kind of like defending in that sense, okay? If you stand up against tyranny, don't be surprised if you get crushed. So this is more of a social thing. If your government is tyrannical, they treat people unfairly and you're not allowed to speak and you're not allowed to even have opinions about things, right? That's tyranny, being treated badly. Usually it's by your government. But I suppose you could have a tyrannical boss as well. You could have a tyrannical parent even, right? Generally, when we speak broadly of tyranny, we're talking about governments, okay? If you stand up against it, so it's kind of wants to push everything down. No, you can't say that. No, you can't do that. No, you're not free to do that. And you manage to stand up on your feet against it, not literally, but metaphorically, the idea of going against the force that is pushing you down. Well, what happens? You might get crushed, so you might be punished even more than others for trying to do that. Again, it's just an example, but I want to try to highlight sort of the non-literal meaning. I tried standing up to a bully in high school and got trounced. This would be more literal physically. So maybe there's a bully who keeps asking for my lunch money in primary school or middle school. If you don't give me your lunch money, I'm going to punch you in the face. And then one day I say, I've had enough of this bully. I will not give you my lunch money. And then, so what am I doing? I'm standing up to the bully. No, I won't give you my lunch money. Go, leave me alone. Stop asking for my lunch money. It's not fair. Well, maybe then I get in a fight with the bully. If I beat the bully or lose to the bully, it doesn't matter. The point there is I did the action of saying no, sort of like standing up to tyranny. Okay, but in this case, in this example, I got trounced, meaning I stood up to the bully, and then I got my face punched and kicked and whatever bullies do, right? So it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. The act of standing up in this case is the desire or the intention to defend yourself, your integrity, your values, your friends, your beliefs, physically, other people, physically yourself, right? I'm going to stand up for myself. If you stand up for yourself, you might do that physically to protect yourself, or you might do that in terms of your values or in terms of criticism, for example. Hey, you shouldn't say that, right? I heard what you said about me yesterday, and that's not good. If you want to say that, you should say it to my face. I shouldn't have to hear it from others in the office. What is your concern? I'm standing up for myself in that case, right? Okay. So that's the second way that we use this, and we have one more. And I think these are all connected in some way, but we kind of have to think abstractly to see the connections between them, right? Will my story stand up in court if I cry while I'm telling it? The CGI in Lord of the Rings still stands up, in my opinion. I'm surprised the shed you built. Apologies here. This should be built. B-U-I-L-T. I'm surprised the shed you built has stood up through so many harsh winters. Okay, so what's this one? Well, this one is, is it durable enough? Can it withstand pressure? Can it withstand something that could make it fall down? And we might mean that physically or not physically. In the example of the shed, I'm surprised the shed you built has stood up through so many harsh winters. I can't believe I have a typo here because I double-checked all of these because the last time I had a couple, I was thinking, okay, I really got to check these carefully. And yet, here it is. Nobody's perfect, but my examples should be, so I apologize for that. So the shed is a little thing that you might build made of wood to house your tools or whatever. And it's outside. And you built it yourself and you didn't really know what you were doing. And yet, 20 years have gone by, howling winds and rain and winter, cold, every possible temperature, heat and cold. And there it is. The shed is still standing and still strong. I'm surprised the shed you built has stood up through so many harsh winters. So the stood up part is about its durability. It's durable. It's very durable. Durable means it's strong and it can't break down or hasn't yet. The CGI in Lord of the Rings still stands up, in my opinion. You know how when you watch older movies from 2005 or something, you might notice some of the effects are kind of cheesy looking. They don't look very realistic. Well, I recently rewatched Lord of the Rings, the 3-movie trilogy. The trilogy, and I thought, okay, the CGI computer effects are going to be really bad. I could definitely tell, and there are a few things that stuck out that, were not so great. But overall, the movie is still very impactful, and the CGI in a lot of areas is still pretty good, which is amazing. So it stood up, in this case, meaning to the comparisons that we might make in time. We look back at it. Now we expect super high quality, amazing computer-generated effects in movies. When we look back at old movies, we say, oh, how could we ever have even watched that? It looks so bad. But if it still looks okay, it still looks pretty good, even after, I don't know how many years, almost 20 years, we say it has stood up. It has stood up. It still stands up. It still looks pretty good. Will my story stand up in court? So often when you hear about court cases and a trial happening, the thing that happens or the statement that is made, if it stands up, that means the jury or the judge believes it. Okay, that makes sense. That's right. And if it doesn't stand up, that means that's the story that you're telling, but people are not believing it. The jury is not believing it. It doesn't stand up in court, meaning during the trial it doesn't stand up. People think, okay, that can't be right. That doesn't sound right, okay? So if I cry while I'm telling the story, and then this happened, maybe it will stand up in court. Maybe I will emotionally be able to convince people to believe that what I'm saying is true, even though maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In this case, I think the suggestion is that it might not be, but the idea is that it will be believed by the jury. So that's the idea. So my challenge to you is, can you make your own examples with all of these meanings? I challenge you to figure out how to build realistic examples using stand-up in the very physical sense of going from sitting to standing, or for example, a physical thing that stands up on its side or is just stood up. The meaning of defending something or defending yourself against another thing, right? Or standing up for someone, against, for, right? The examples we talked about, notice the for and the against and the to, right? Stand up for what you believe, stand up for me, stand up against tyranny, and stand up to a bully. So the bully is the thing that's threatening you. So try those. Try a couple, maybe 2 examples for that. And then the last one is a little bit more abstract in some cases, where we're talking about, for example, something standing up after many years, meaning that it kind of looks okay still, or it's still okay even though we would expect it to not be okay. Or we're talking about, for example, materials or durability, things that are still around because they're strong or they're well built, or perhaps the court example, although that one is pretty narrow and pretty specific. I would say, the second and third one are probably a bit better, okay? So that's my challenge. Let me know how it goes. You can pop your examples in the comments. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and also check out my free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description. All right. Can we use a gerund after stand up? Let's see. Stand up. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it would be a gerund. Let's see. We can use an ing. She stood up looking confused. So she stood up looking confused. This is the main action, right? And this is describing the way that she does the action or how the action seems. So it's not strictly a gerund, but it is an ing, not used as the main verb of the action, right? This is the simultaneous thing happening along with stood up. So I would say, yeah, you can use an ing after stood up. Hidalgo Michado says, I stood up by the rain yesterday. Okay, now that's actually an interesting one. So, the only issue I have, if you stand up by something, it has to be something that can be stood up by. So if there's a house or a building or a waterfall, that's a thing that has a location, right? The problem is the rain is kind of abstract. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. You can't say, oh, there's the rain, right? You can't point to it as an object. So To use by something, you want to talk about something that has more of a location. By the windmill, right? I stood up by the windmill and looked out over the horizon. That would make sense. If you stood up in the rain, that would be a little different. Then you don't have to worry about its location. You are in the rain because it's raining on you, and you stood up in the rain, right? I'm not sure why you would say stood up in the rain, but it would be grammatically correct. Yes, this is another meaning of stood up that I didn't want to get into because it's too narrow, but this is also how stood up is used. I was thinking about using this example to stand someone up in usually a date situation specifically. That's the second time this month she's stood him up, i.e. to fail to meet as arranged, also common usage in the U.S. But it's specifically used in a romantic context. So if two friends are planning to meet on Thursday at 4 p.m. for coffee and one doesn't show up, they'll probably just say, oh, he didn't show up. My friend didn't show up. Hey, what happened? It's a no-show. But if it is a date of some kind and then one person doesn't show up for whatever reason, then you would say he stood me up or she stood me up. He stood me up or she stood me up. That might be that they intentionally didn't meet you because they decided they weren't interested anymore, or perhaps they couldn't make it for some reason, but we don't know. I don't know why you didn't come. So where were you? You stood me up. Usually it's seen kind of as an insult, but that's a sort of very narrow use case. I'm standing up for what I believe. That's exactly right. That's totally correct. The prosecution hasn't got enough evidence for the charge to stand up. Yeah, that's also good. That's a good one for sure. That is a good one for sure. All right. Any other questions I'm able to answer? That's all I have planned for today. In 2 Wednesdays, we'll be doing the lifestyle. We'll be doing lifestyle. Next week, there won't be any podcasts. But yeah, in 2 weeks, we will be back. But I'll, of course, be doing the usual one on Friday and on Saturday. So any other questions for now? If not, I think we shall call it a day, friends and neighbors. Okay. All right, well, thank you all for joining. Those of you who are here, those watching later, if you would like to join live on Wednesdays, Fridays, and actually now Saturday mornings, you're welcome to do that. We start at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, approximately. Bring your questions. I recommend preparing questions throughout the week and then bringing a couple questions you want to ask. We do a Q&A section, particularly on Friday. We'll do more questions. So bring those for Friday. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the full courses. You can grab a free course. That's in the first link in the description. You can join the Discord, which is also free. It's an English learning community. If you don't have Discord, you can download it on your phone. It is very easy. So that's free as well. Look out for Black Friday sales happening next week, the biggest season for sales of the year. So I'll be doing a bunch of sales next week on the courses. And I think that's about it. So thank you so much for joining. Have a safe and relaxing Wednesday, or for some people it might be Thursday. Take care. And I'll see you hopefully on Friday. Bye, everybody.